Also joining us this evening, Nouriel Roubini, Professor of Economics and International Business at New York University. I am pleased to have him back on this program. Welcome.
Pleasure being back with you,
Charlie. Where are we? Tell me, in terms of, you and I have had several conversations here during this thing, and you were profiled in New York Times Magazine as one of the people who had warned us what might happen. So some of the things you suggested have happened. So where are we now in this continuum of this huge financial crisis?
Well, in February I wrote this paper saying, there's a risk of a systemic financial meltdown, outlining 12 steps to a financial disaster. And unfortunately, what has unraveled for the last few months has been exactly along the lines of these 12 steps.
So we've gone through all 12?
Yeah, we've gone through all 12. The step 12 was exactly this kind of a situation of unraveling stock market, interbank spreads, widening, panic, fear, and collapse of financial markets. And on Friday last week, literally we were 1 epsilon away from a systemic financial collapse because the stock market had fallen every day of the week for 8 days in a row. So it was a real disaster. At that point, I think policymakers realized we're peering into the abyss. It could have been a systemic financial collapse. And therefore, they went into the weekend with the IMF meetings in Washington, where all the financial officials of the G7 other countries were together. And they realized that this step-by-step approach was not systematic to this crisis, was not enough. You had to recognize this was a severe crisis and you need to do something radical. Right. And what has happened is that what they've announced, the US, the G7, the Europeans, and now also the administration goes a step in the right direction. That's why market rallied yesterday. I think that the situation ahead of us is going to be very bumpy still. We're going to have a severe recession. It's not going to be short and shallow. It's going to last at least 2 years. We'll have a financial crisis, but probably going to avoid a systemic financial collapse. That's what has been avoided.
Oh, so it has been avoided.
Yeah, we're going to avoid a catastrophe, but I think that it's not a reason to be optimistic, because even if we're going to avoid a catastrophe, and a catastrophe would have been a kind of like a L-shaped recession that's going to last 10 years, like the one that Japan experienced after the bursting of its real estate and equity bubble. Right now, this recession is going to be long and protracted, meaning U-shaped, lasting at least 2 years. So the recession train has left the station. We're already in recession. Recession is going to get worse. The financial crisis and the banking crisis train has left the station. There'll be hundreds of banks are going to go belly up. What we've done is avoiding a more severe catastrophe, a disaster. But still, it's going to be very, very painful for the real economy and for financial markets in this. We haven't reached the bottom yet.
Well, Martin Wolf said on this program that he was amazed at the fragility of the system.
Yeah, we discovered that, the most sophisticated financial system in the world was totally fragile, because we created actually a system in which there was not proper rules, proper institution, proper supervision and regulation. The ideology in Washington for the last 8 years regarding financial market has been self-regulation. Self-regulation is meaningless, means no regulation. It was an ideology based on market discipline. There was no market discipline, because when there is mania, when there are bubbles, everybody's excited and nobody's worrying about the risk. There was a reliance on internal risk management. But the previous CEO of Citi said, when the music is playing, you got to dance, and everybody's taking risks. Nobody's listening to the risk managers.
The CEO of Citigroup said.
Exactly, absolutely. So nobody's listening to the risk managers, and then there was a reliance on the rating agencies that were being paid by the people that were supposed to rate. So the conflict of interest was huge. So we created a financial system that, without proper rules and regulations, like the law of the jungle, you have periods of time where there is bubbles, there is manias, and they're followed by periods then of panic and fear, and you go from one to the other, from a boost to a bust. That's why you need an appropriate system of regulation and supervision of banks, of hedge funds, of broker-dealers, of other financial institutions. Without it, it's going to be a disaster. Excessive amount of financial innovation that is not controlled and contained is very risky. That's what we've learned.
When did we have the last chance to avoid this?
We missed the chance a few years ago, the Fed.
So, but was it 2 years ago? In other words, we couldn't. 3 months ago, we couldn't have avoided this.
No, 3 months ago the damage was done. Even a year ago the damage was done.
Before even Bear Stearns, we couldn't have avoided it.
Yeah, at this point, the mistakes were done a few years ago.
Right.
The Fed cut rates and kept them too low for too long. There was no supervision regulation of these toxic mortgages and other credit. The entire ideology was one of a laissez-faire. So we really created the biggest bubble in U.S. asset market. And it was not just a subprime mortgage problem. The same kind of access that were in subprime, in near prime, in prime, in home equity loans, in commercial real estate, credit cards, auto loans, student loans, leverage loans that finance LBOs should have never occurred, excessive borrowing by the state and municipal governments, the money bonds that are in trouble, commercial loans, corporate bonds. all this creation of credit derivatives and CDS are going to blow up right now. So we created really a huge mess because we didn't properly regulate the financial system.
You're getting a lot of credit for seeing this. A lot of people are praising you. On the other hand, some people will say some equivalency of this. A stop clock is right twice a day. Mm-hmm. In other words, did you just, why this insight that you had that said all these elements are here, and why so few people?
Well, you know, I think I was right because I've been studying financial crisis for over 2 decades. I've written books about them. I was involved in policy making for 2 years in Washington.
So had Ben Bernanke, and he didn't see it.
Yeah. But let's put it this way, there are some biases. I think that policymakers, they're always to be cautious. Even if they worry about stuff, they cannot say it in public because there is a risk of confidence. I think there are lots of very good analysts on Wall Street, but there's all these biases of sell-side research. When your firm is underwriting stocks and bonds and securities, you cannot be sticking your neck out and saying we're going to have a recession. So I think that many of the professional kind of forecasters having this bias coming from their institutional role. And you don't have enough independent thinkers and scholars who are willing to speak the truth. But I was not the only one. Bob Shiller and many other ones were warning about the housing bubble. I think some of the academics were out there realizing this was a very, very severe risk.
So if you were doing the kind of message that you were doing back then, when you were warning of this, what would you be warning us of now?
I would be warning that what has been done over the weekend is not going to be enough. I think that the banks, first of all, are going to need more than $250 billion. Their capital needs are going to be probably twice as much. I will warn about the fact that many banks that are zombie, they should be shut down. The sooner the better, especially now we're guaranteeing deposits, we're guaranteeing interbank lines, we're guaranteeing the new debt of the banks. You have to make sure you separate the banks that are illiquid but solvent, that you have to recapitalize from those that are essentially insolvent. The sooner you shut them down, the better. Otherwise, they're going to take deposits, they're going to make another risky loans, and they're going to be a disaster. That needs to be done. On top of it, now we're going into a severe recession. Demand is falling. Consumption demand by consumers is collapsing. The investment demand by corporations, new capital is also collapsing. And if the private sector is not going to spend, you need a major fiscal stimulus program, something of the order of $300 billion. Roads, infrastructures, giving money to state and local government, unemployment benefits, energy, whatever not. Otherwise, 6 months from now, we might try to rescue the financial system, but if the economy is going to collapse, those delinquencies, those credit losses are going to mount, and therefore anything we do now to fix the financial system is going to be undone by a very severe recession. So we need to stimulate growth through fiscal expansion. And the other problem is that the bad bank loans are also the debt of the household sector. You have millions of households that are now on the verge of bankruptcy, on the verge of losing their homes, being foreclosed. Therefore, you have to reduce the face value of this debt. That was done during the Great Depression. We created the Homeowners Loan Corporation that bought all these bad assets from the banks, reduced the face value, and refinance homeowners into longer-term fixed-rate mortgages they could afford. If we don't avoid this tsunami of foreclosure, consumption is going to keep on falling because people don't have money to spend. They're burdened under a mountain of debt, and the recession is going to become more severe, and this foreclosure is going to dump more homes on the market and push down even further home prices. About a third of all sales today are either foreclosures or short sales. So they're distressed sales. They're not real sales. So we really have to do much more in order to prevent this financial crisis from becoming a even more severe economic crisis.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for coming back. Nouriel Roubini from New York University. Back in a moment. Stay with us.